Today, she will give us a special lecture on cooperation with Korea in development of agriculture and natural community. Please give her a big round of applause.
안녕하십니까? 저는 필리핀 대사 테레사 레베가입니다. And special thanks to Professor Hyo Jong-shin, who used to be the Dean of the College of Agriculture here at Kangwon University, but is now head of the special program with KOICA. Thank you very much for your presence today. And of course to all the students who are with us from different countries, from different regions in the world. Thank you for coming. Before I begin, if I may just introduce my colleagues who are with me this afternoon. We have the real expert on Philippines-Korea agricultural relations, our agricultural attaché, Ms. Aleli Maghirang. Ms. Maghirang has been representing the Philippines Department of Agriculture for nearly 5 years now. Nearly 5 years now in Korea, so she knows, the expanse and the details of our cooperation. And like you, she also undertook graduate studies in agriculture here in Korea. Okay, so she is one of you. She's like you. She's like you some years ago. And we also have our translator, our official translator and interpreter from the Philippine Embassy, Ms. Dong Chae-yoon. Ms. Yoon, thank you very much. So with that, I'd like to give you this afternoon an overview of the Philippines and Korea cooperation in agriculture and rural community development. Of course, this is one very important aspect of our relations, but I would also like to give you an idea of Philippines-Korea relations in general. We have over 73 years of diplomatic relations. We celebrated 73 years of our diplomatic ties last March of this year. So in 2 years' time, we will be celebrating 75 years of diplomatic relations. The Philippines was the first Asian country to recognize the Republic of Korea. And our former ambassador to the United Nations, General Carlos P. Romulo, who became the president of the UN General Assembly, was the gentleman who recommended the formation of the UN Committee on Korea back in September 1947. And the UNCOK, as it was then called, was responsible for overseeing the elections in Korea. And of course, Mr. Syngman Rhee, former president, the late Syngman Rhee, was elected president. Unfortunately, a few years after that, war broke out in the Korean Peninsula. And once again, the Philippines was the 5th country to send combat-ready troops under the Philippine Expeditionary Force to Korea. Over 7,000 of our soldiers came here, including one of our former presidents, President Fidel V. Ramos, who was an awardee of Korea's Taeguk Medal, which is the highest medal for military bravery and service. He was awarded by the government of Korea for that. Mr. President Ramos, former President Ramos, is still alive. He's in his 90s already, and Korea is always part of his heart. That's what he always tells us. So I always say that the Philippines and Korea enjoy a historic relationship, but I also like to say that it is both historic and forward-looking. And our cooperation in agriculture is one example of the forward-looking quality of our relations with Korea. Okay, but just to situate ourselves, Korea is one of our closest neighbors. We are the closest ASEAN country to Korea in terms of actual travel time and distance. We are 4 hours away by direct flights, and I'm very happy to announce that since the Philippines reopened partially in February and then fully in April of this year, and with Korea also opening up, we are now starting to reinstate many of the direct flights from Korea, from different points of departure in Korea two also different destinations in the Philippines. And we have a time difference of 1 hour. Korea is ahead. Okay, KST, Korean Standard Time, is ahead of PST, or Philippine Standard Time. Just to give you an outline of what I'm going to discuss today, just the Philippines at a glance, and then an overview of our bilateral relations, and then the overview of our bilateral relations in the field of agriculture, and the bilateral trade in agriculture, so you can see the impact of what our Department of Agriculture and the private sector are doing in terms of actual market development here in Korea. Bilateral cooperation in agriculture, where KOICA and educational institutions like KNU are among our vital partners. And of course, Philippine agriculture and its importance to rural community development and the rural economy. Okay? So just very quickly, the Philippines at a glance. We are used to, Korea, for example, is a peninsula. Really, there's a main peninsula, but there are also outlying islands. But in the Philippines, there are more islands than peninsulas. We are an archipelagic country. We have 7,641 islands. And you can see there our total land area of 300,000 square kilometers. We have 16 regions. We are divided into regions. We have 8 of them in Luzon, which is the biggest island. That's the red island group there. And then 3 in the Visayas, which is the green group of islands in the middle. And then Mindanao. We have 6 regions in Mindanao, which is the southernmost portion of the country. Mindanao is closest to our neighbors in the southern part of ASEAN, such as Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Malaysia. Okay, and we have 81 provinces, more than Korea, so many provinces. 144 cities, 1,490 municipalities, and over 42,000 barangays, which is the barangay is the smallest unit of the smallest political unit in the Philippines. And several barangays make up a town, and then towns make up cities. And as of 2021, a total population of 111 million. But we had just started actually a new national census just before the pandemic hit. Conducted by our Philippine Statistics Authority, but they have not been able to complete the latest national census because of the pandemic, but hopefully soon they will be able to. And just very briefly, an overview of our bilateral relations. As I mentioned, we are celebrating 73 years of diplomatic relations since March 1949. As I mentioned, over 7,000 Filipino soldiers fought side by side with Koreans during the Korean War under the United Nations command. Those are photographs from my presentation of credentials to the former President of Korea, His Excellency Moon Jae-in, in October of 2021. And there's also another photo on the lower left-hand corner. This is the conclusion ceremony for the negotiations for the Philippines-Korea Free Trade Agreement, which we hope will be signed and implemented sometime this year, because for the Philippines it has a very important impact on the agricultural cooperation, particularly the export of our fresh fruits to Korea. And for the Korean side, it provides platforms for entry into the Philippine and the greater Southeast Asian e-vehicle industry, e-vehicle market. Okay, so there's some interesting facts there. Our bilateral trade, our exports, total exports, and total approved investments. Okay, so let's go to the meat of our discussion today, and which is something which will interest the students here. And this is on the bilateral trade in agriculture between the Philippines and Korea. Just to give you an overview, our Philippine agri-fisheries exports to South Korea is our top 4 export destination. The first being Japan, the second China, the third the United States, and the fourth being Korea. So Korea is one of our most important markets for the agricultural and agri-food and agri-fisheries sector. So you can see there the bulk of our exports to Korea in this sector are in tropical fruits. So bananas are number 1, pineapples, mangoes, papayas, and we also have other processed fruits and agricultural products, fisheries at 5%, coconut and vegetable products at 7%, and cigarettes. This is actually Philippine-sourced tobacco from many of our tobacco-producing regions, particularly in the northern part of the country, entering Korea. And according to our Department of Agriculture office, of course, even with the pandemic, even at the height of the pandemic, this particular sector has grown. For the tropical fruits sector, we grew by almost 20% during the pandemic. And in particular, exports of coconut and vegetable products have been on the rise. I think because people are more health conscious now. And coconut, according to some preliminary studies, coconut is virgin coconut oil, for example, which is produced in the Philippines, is a very good substance to help boost your immune system from COVID and other similar illnesses. Okay, so in 2021, our total agri-fisheries trade balance stood at US $288.4 million, and Philippine agri-fisheries exports to Korea was at $526.83 million, and our Philippine agri-fisheries imports from Korea stood at $238.43 million. And as I mentioned earlier, 20% growth of Philippine exports in this particular field. So I think we all can see here, the impact and the importance of food security globally. And there's a very healthy engagement here in terms of the numbers. Okay, now this is a more detailed breakdown of the status of our Philippine agricultural exports to Korea as of 2021. So you will see there that bananas are the most in-demand fresh tropical fruit products from the Philippines. And you will see there the percentage of our share in the Korean market. So bananas, nearly 74%, or 3/4 of the market here in Korea. Among the other countries which export are, of course, countries in Central and Latin America and South America. And then pineapples, which we export in lesser volume, but we also have a very, very high share of the market at almost 88%. So quite dominant in the pineapple market here. And then mangoes. Mangoes, because it is a product which is grown in many other countries other than the Philippines, you will notice that the market share is considerably lower. But we always like to say that our mangoes have a very distinctive premium flavor. Okay? And papaya, we have 100% share as of now in the market. And then, as I mentioned earlier, tobacco from the Philippines with 50.8% of the market share. Okay. So Philippines and Korea bilateral cooperation. This is very important because this really contributes to the numbers that you saw earlier. We're only able to maintain our market share and hopefully increase and grow our market share if we have continuing active and robust bilateral cooperation in agriculture. And some of the official platforms and mechanisms we have in place include an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding on Philippines-Korea Cooperation in Agriculture, which was signed on June 5, 2018 in Seoul between representatives of the Department of Agriculture and the MAFRA of Korea. And as a result of the first MOU signing in 2018, about a year and a half before the pandemic, we were able to hold the first Philippines-Korea Joint Agriculture Working Group meeting in Manila towards the end of 2018. And we have the second, Joint Committee on Agriculture meeting last year online. So even during the pandemic, our agriculture officials from both the Philippines and Korea really made sure that the dialogue, the collaboration, cooperation will continue. And also another very important milestone in our bilateral agricultural cooperation was the official signing between the Department of Agriculture again and the Ministry of Fisheries of Korea for the first Memorandum of Understanding on Philippines-Korea cooperation in fisheries, which is a very important aspect of our agricultural cooperation. This took place in November 2019, and you see their signing for the Philippines, our current Secretary for Agriculture, Mr. William Dar, Minister Dar, assisted by Ms. Maghirang over there. Okay. And as a result of this, we held the first Joint Fisheries Committee meeting. So this is already the working group. These are the people who are really implementing the provisions of the MOU in October last year, 2021. And we will be hosting, the Philippines is planning to host the second Joint Fisheries Committee meeting this year, hopefully offline, in person in the Philippines. Maybe not in Manila, maybe our Department of Agriculture is looking at venues outside of Manila. So there will also be an opportunity for the Korean side to see some of the agricultural developments in other parts of the country. And the cooperation between the Philippines and Korea on agriculture is not confined to the official agricultural cooperation platforms. We have brought our this particular very important growing area of cooperation in other platforms as well. And when we held the first Philippines-Korea Joint Science and Technology Committee meeting, which I must share with you took many, many years of planning, but we were finally able to hold the first joint committee meeting led by our Department of Science and Technology on the Philippines side, and then led by the Ministry of Science and Information Technology on the Korean side. We have included some aspects of agricultural cooperation, especially the sectors and subsectors with the heavy technology and innovation component within the Science and Technology Committee. So you will see there that smart farming, which is agriculture-based but also has very strong science and technology and innovation component into the science and technology platform. So it is a very important emerging cooperation area, and it was part of the agenda, one of the main agenda items for our first joint science and technology meeting. And I just wanted to add that within the scope of smart farming, within the year, as a result of the discussions and the meetings, we hopefully will be able to roll out a project on vertical or indoor farming, technology refinement and adoption for urban areas. And it will make use of AI, artificial intelligence, other Korean technologies in hydroponics, CLSU and TAU, Tau technologies on indoor farming to make it, to come up with a model which is a practical, doable, and efficient for the particular farming and growing conditions in the Philippines. Many of you may be aware, but just in case you are not, the Philippines is part of the top 10 most climate vulnerable countries in the world. Therefore, for us to really secure, to maintain growth in food security, we need technology to adapt to these conditions in our country, as I'm sure you are also doing in your respective countries. With climate change being a very important matter, which we see already affecting many parts of the world. So this project is expected to start in September of this year, both with the Department of Science and Technology in the Philippines and the Ministry of Science and Information Technology of Korea, providing total funding for the 3-year project. So we hope this will come to fruition soon. So, official development assistance, or ODA, in the field of agricultural cooperation is also very important. As I said, the Philippines, for us to grow our agriculture sector, to make it more efficient for our people and for our communities and for food security, and to continue to be able to contribute substantially to the overall growth of the country, to our gross domestic product. The official development assistance pillar is very important. Right now, for the Philippines agricultural development, Korea, through its official development assistance, ranks number 4 in terms of the official development partners of the Philippines in the field of agriculture. You will see there the other partners. And this is as of 2020. So for agriculture, $70 million in official development assistance grants and 200 million in official development assistance loans for the agricultural sector. So this is a very important pillar to get the programs going. And we just wanted to provide you with the flow chart for how Korean official development assistance is helping to get agriculture programs off the ground and how they're being implemented. So from Korean ODA, it is usually divided into, as the experience of many of your countries, into both bilateral assistance and also multilateral assistance. So through grants, technical cooperation and training, through projects such as the vertical or indoor farming I described earlier. And then, of course, there's also official development assistance through soft loans, through EDCF loans under the KEXIM, or the Export-Import Bank of Korea. And very important for us, for the Philippines, is that we are very pleased that we have very active partners, in particular KOICA, for the implementation and execution of the official development assistance program for the Philippines, and also related ministries and institutions such as MAFRA, MOF in terms of agriculture, the RDA, and other related agencies. So you can see them there. Also through MOTI, RDA, the KREI, KRC, the EPIS, the APQA, and the final, of course, beneficiaries are really the Department of Agriculture, which has a network of regional offices throughout the country, throughout the Philippines, working very closely with the LGUs, or the local government units in our country, to make sure that the programs are in place, the programs are properly implemented, and that the reporting mechanism and the impact of the project is properly documented and seen. Okay. So just briefly on R&D cooperation in agriculture, which is very important. And COPIA is a very important factor here. This is the Korea Program on International Agriculture, which has an active presence in the Philippines, mainly in partnership with our Department of Agriculture and other institutions. So this is a very important pillar or arm of the bilateral cooperation, because research and development, as you all know, is very important in the agricultural field. So we have actually several agreements in place in this particular area. You will see there the signing of the protocol to amend the Memorandum of Agreement between the Department of Agriculture and the RDA for the establishment of the COPIA Center in the Philippines. So the COPIA Center is there in the Philippines already. And then we also have a Memorandum of Agreement signing between the Department of Agriculture and Korea EPIS on the establishment of a Korea Smart Farm project in the Philippines, also in 2018. So the K Smart Farm. So this is a flagship project which our Department of Agriculture is pursuing very actively. And aside from research and development, aside from the agricultural inputs, the Department of Agriculture and the Philippine government also have established a linkage and a partnership and close collaboration with KAMICO, which is the Korea Agricultural Machinery Industry Cooperative. This is private sector led, but also in line with our development efforts. We all know that agri-mechanization cooperation is very important for modern agriculture to make farming more efficient and more sustainable in the long term. And therefore, we continue to pursue a strong partnership with KAMICO. We have had KAMICO delegations visit the Philippines already to establish linkages and networks there. Of course, they were not able to do a lot of on-site meetings and visitations during the pandemic, but hopefully in the near future, in the midterm, they will be able to once again visit the Philippines so we can have even more active cooperation in agri-mechanization. We actually have a Memorandum of Understanding on Agri-Machinery Cooperation, again signed by our current Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Dar. And we have here, several private sector participants. You can see them there on Liwa Industry for grain processing, Sungbo on lifting machines for mangoes, durian, and other fruits, Jonang Precision for cabinet dryers for fruits and fish and fishes, and also Tekwang for grain vacuum machines, and Bulls Company Limited for onion harvesters. So all these components for agri-mechanization to make farming more efficient and more modern. And there's several areas of partnership under this particular pillar. There is capacity building on operation, maintenance, and troubleshooting of agri-machineries. There is agri-machinery development, which is very important because we also need to build, the Philippines needs to build its own agri-machinery development or industry or sector. And this involves joint needs assessment and on-site investigation, and also agri-machinery development on joint technology design, on prototyping, testing, and promotion. You will see there, I actually, there's the photo in the upper right-hand corner. I had the opportunity to meet a few months ago with the current KAMICO president to discuss cooperation in agri-mechanization at our embassy in Seoul. Okay, I mentioned earlier that one of the emerging active pillars of our bilateral agricultural cooperation is smart farming. And the Philippines recognizes Korea's leadership in this particular field of smart farming. And I just wanted to we just wanted to share with you some information about the ongoing PPP KOICA Smart Greenhouse Production Project in Baguio. Baguio is in the northern part of the Philippines. It is in one of our temperate zones. The temperature range in Baguio normally does not go above 25 or 25 to 27 degrees. That's probably the warmest in Baguio during the warmest months of the year. Unlike other parts of the Philippines where during the summer, for example, temperatures can go up to 35 to 40 degrees. In Baguio, it's temperate, it's cool. This is in the mountainous area, so sometimes lows of about single digit, 8 degrees, 5 degrees, sometimes even 3 degrees, but no higher than 25, 27 degrees at the warmest. So it is an ideal place for agriculture, and particularly for vegetable growing, particularly for vegetables and fruits which require more temperate climates. So this is a photo of the actual smart farm in Baguio. Okay. And this is another ongoing smart farm project in the Philippines. This is also a smart greenhouse production project, SGPP, in Rares, Tanay. Tanay is in Rizal province, not as, which does not enjoy the same elevation as Baguio, but is still one of the cooler parts of the country. You can see, if I may just briefly go back to the Baguio farm and then now to the Tanay farm, you will notice that they are growing cherry tomatoes, which is a very high value crop, and also peppers, another high value crop. And you will see on this particular slide the ongoing smart farm projects in Baguio, in Rizal, in Iloilo, which is in the center of the country, and in Bukidnon, which is another elevated part of the country, mountainous region where they grow, where we grow coffee, and also where there are one of the few where they also cultivate grapes and other fruits which you do not normally find in the tropical climate. And there are, and on the other side of the panel, the slide, you will notice that we've listed down some newly approved projects, such as an innovation center and 3 test beds. Highland, at Benguet State University. This is the same area as Baguio. Lowland in Bohol, and then mid-lowland in the Davao region, which is also, Davao region is one of the very important fruit baskets of the country, where we grow a large volume of our tropical fruits for export globally. And very important agricultural crop for the Philippines, as it is for Korea, and I think many of the countries represented here today. Rice. There are also rice processing complexes. I have not been to them, but according to Aleli, these are really large processing centers, because she has been there herself. Again, a partnership between Korea and the Philippines in several key rice-growing regions of the country, in Aurora, in Iloilo, in Davao, Pangasinan, and Bohol. So 5 rice processing complexes. Now, there are other technical cooperation initiatives that we have between the Philippines and Korea. This includes fish and fishery products. We have a mutual recognition arrangement, or MRA, which was signed between the Department of Agriculture's Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources and the MFDS of Korea. Now, the mutual recognition agreement on food safety of Philippine fishery export products to Korea is very important, because through the MRA, we are able to facilitate the exports of Philippine fishery products to Korea. We're also ensuring food safety, and it also recognizes parallel accreditation and inspection of Philippine fishery facilities through our Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. We have in line for this year other technical cooperation initiatives which also aim to to sustain and to support existing bilateral cooperation programs. We've listed down 4 there: the establishment of an agriculture-based central data ecosystem, or ABCDE project. This will improve and expand government services, so we can properly document and see if we are efficiently, if the government is efficiently providing services and able to reach out to the Philippine farming sector, and to enhance our country's competitiveness on agricultural administration. And Korea is helping us because it has made advancements in agricultural administrative management and technology, and in implementing AGRICS and ABRIS. So there is a pending request for funding, so hopefully we can get this project off the ground. Also, the establishment of a smart agriculture manufacturing technology development center in the Philippines, to enable us to establish a smart farm industry technology innovation center to support the ongoing efforts to modernize the agriculture sector. Before the end of my presentation, I will show you how this forms part of the Department of Agriculture's vision for a modern agriculture ecosystem in the Philippines. And this in particular is aimed at the high-value crops sector. Livestock inspection and safety enhancement project, which of course is very important in terms of livestock quarantine and also biosafety and security, and ensuring the quality of meat quality standards in the country, and the establishment of smart pig farms in the Philippines. Again, moving towards increased biosecurity, and looking at smart pig farm models. We also have here 3 additional initiatives: establishment of an advanced Philippine Fisheries Biotechnology Center to help us benchmark successful experiences on advanced fisheries biotechnology, on conservation management, on genetic resources, biorepositories, and also on molecular genetics and reproductive technology, and aquatic biomedicine, nutrition, and natural products. And we are also, along the same field, we are also hoping to have a program on smart aquaculture development and conservation of the marine ecosystem of Guimaras province, which is actually an island province in the Philippines. And then a smart agriculture system in Western Visayas. I do have to share that in terms of Guimaras and Western Visayas, these are among the more vulnerable, climate vulnerable regions of the country. Therefore, the application of technology is very important to ensure that they're still able to have sustainable and productive agriculture sectors in these provinces, despite the challenges of climate change. Okay, so how does this all impact or affect rural community development and economy in the Philippines? Just an overview of the Philippine agriculture ecosystem. Agriculture is the principal source of income and employment in the Philippines, and it contributes over 10% to the overall GDP of the country as of 2021. And it provides livelihood, direct and indirect, for around half of the population of the Philippines. And 33% of the total workforce are engaged in, of course, in agriculture and related industries. And you will see there, in this particular slide, the economic relevance of Philippine agriculture and fisheries. We have about 30 million hectares of land area, and 41% of, or 12.3 million hectares is being used for agriculture. So you can see there the diagram, the pie chart for the percentage of land, the permanent meadows, permanent crops, particularly for major crops like rice, and then the arable land, and then the forest area. Forest area is about a quarter, 25% of the country. And you can see here the crops, the main or the major crops, agricultural crops in the Philippines. So from rice, coconut, mangoes, coffee, cocoa, maize or corn, eggplant, squash, tomato, and of course for livestock, for the pork sector. So that's a breakdown of the major agricultural crops in the Philippines. So again, continuing the economic relevance of Philippine agriculture and fisheries, the jobs in agriculture are quite substantial. 32%, so that's about 11 million people employed in primary production in the agricultural sector. Predominantly a male dominated labor sector with 74%, women 26%, and over about 2.3 million are youth. So again, to reiterate, majority of Filipinos rely on agriculture for their livelihood, but there's also a notable low youth participation rate with only 21% share among the total employed in agriculture. I think in many countries this is a growing concern because younger people, the younger generation perhaps do not see agriculture as a very interesting or trendy field to go, but I saw a program on Korean television recently where some provincial governments are encouraging more young people to go into farming, particularly smart farming, and to give them hands-on experience so they can see the importance of this particular sector. I'm optimistic that with the lessons from the global pandemic, more and more young people will see the importance of food security and the importance of this particular sector, and that perhaps what they think of agriculture decades ago is very different now, because there's a very, very strong input in terms of technology and innovation, and also a large input on how to make it more sustainable, how to make agriculture sustainable and kinder to nature, working with nature. The average monthly earnings of a Filipino female woman farmer is US $112, which is about $10, almost $11 lower than the US average, than the US earned by Filipino male farmers. And compared to other countries, the Philippine value added per worker is only 10% of that from the OECD member countries like Korea, or 10.67% of Southeast Asian workers. So we have to do a lot of work on human capacity building in this particular sector. And you also see there the value added per worker. So there's a graphic illustration of this, this disconnect, this divide. There, okay. As I mentioned earlier, we face unique challenges, as do practically every other, all other countries. We have unique challenges. I mentioned earlier the challenge of being a predominantly agricultural country, still predominantly agricultural country, but with a growing manufacturing and industrial base, being one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. And the unique geography also of the Philippines. We are an archipelago of over 7,600 islands, 7,641 islands. So we face unique challenges in aligning our government support system with the needs of our people because of our geography and our unique features and qualities. There are also many communities located in isolated mountain regions of the country still, or in coastal areas that are difficult to reach. So one of the thrusts of our government infrastructure program for the last few years has been to focus on building the infrastructure for connectivity, bringing more of the islands together, connecting them through complex multi-bridge systems and also ferry systems, and also making sure that we are able to continue with the farm-to-market road access infrastructure and building in the country. As I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to give you an idea of our approach, our Department of Agriculture's approach to agriculture and fisheries transformation. Of course, the vision is to have a food secure and resilient Philippines with an empowered agricultural sector, especially at the grassroots, our farmers and our fisher folk. And we need to empower them through collective action and to attract private sector investments with inclusive agribusiness towards efficiency, productivity, sustainability, and resilience. The twin goals are masaganang ani, which means bountiful harvest, and mataas na kita, which means high returns for our agriculture sector. And just to give you an idea of our food security framework, we have the overarching vision there for a food secure and resilient Philippines with empowered stakeholders. And also we need to survive, reboot and grow. And you can see there the various factors and strategies that we have to take into account. Production and availability, accessibility, affordability, price stability is very important, sustainability and food safety, and we need to work on farm consolidation, modernization, industrialization, export promotion, which is part of our job here in Korea, and infrastructure development. And we are not able to do this without, of course, the investments in the sector, the support from our lawmakers, and a very clear roadmap towards development. And we would like to see results in improved systems, improved products, more empowered and enabled and skilled people, stronger institutions, and a balanced ecosystem for our agriculture network to grow and to be sustainable. So you can see there the vision of our Department of Agriculture in terms of consolidation, the modernization, ongoing modernization programs, industrialization, and of course, very important, the human capital development or the professionalization of the agriculture ecosystem. And just a glimpse of the Philippine food system here. From production to consumption, to biosafety, biosecurity, and efficiency, and adopting context-specific policies, because while we have general challenges for the country overall, there are also very specific challenges in different regions or parts of the country because of our unique geography. And I just want to say something about the very important partnership we have with KOICA, with the Korea International Cooperation Agency in terms of agriculture. So you can see there, KOICA has been a very valued partner in terms of regional development, in terms particularly of water management and health and hygiene, transportation and disaster prevention. These are very important pillars of our cooperation with KOICA. Without these pillars, the agriculture sector will suffer because it's part of the ecosystem. If we do not have efficient and adaptive disaster prevention programs in place and technology in place, our agriculture sector is always one of the first to be hit. Whenever there is a natural disaster, a natural calamity in the Philippines, particularly say during monsoon season or typhoon season, the biggest damage is always to agriculture and infrastructure. So, and these are very, very important pillars of our economy. And of course, our Department of Agriculture is one with the Philippine government in doing its part, in doing its share, in making sure that the country is able to face the challenges of the pandemic. And now that we have opened up, the agriculture sector is a very important part of the new normal. Or hopefully what is a better normal in the Philippines. So let me end my presentation there. Kamsahamnida to Kangwon National University, to the faculty and the administration, and of course the students. Thank you. And if you want to know more about Philippines and Korea agricultural cooperation and other programs and what else we're doing in the agricultural sector, we do post from time to time major programs and initiatives through our social media. So you can follow us on Facebook, on our official Facebook page, and also on Instagram at PH in Korea. Kamsahamnida. Thank you again.